question for you. And not everybody has to answer, just maybe one or two has to answer, but think about this. If there were one event that you could attend in all the world, what would that event be? Brett said the Super Bowl. Okay? And there are a lot of people who that's on their bucket list, is it not? To attend the Super Bowl. I mean, you're talking several $1,000s to get a ticket in the nosebleed section. But wouldn't it be a fun trip to get to go to the Super Bowl? And even if it's just one time. What's another one? The World Series. Okay, we got some sports talking. Okay, these women don't want to do nothing. They just want to sit at home, do nothing. Okay, what's that? The Olympics. Now, see, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Absolutely. That would be fun, Teresa.
Christ's return. That's what I'd love to be on the
This morning in a post, I posted that there are a lot of things that individuals will do a lot to do to go to one thing like that. You know it? And there's all kinds of events. Some people would say, ooh, I'd love to go to New York on New Year's Eve and watch the dropping of the ball in Times Square. And that's something they desire to do. Maybe there is a marriage of some very famous individual that they'd love to go to. Or maybe a high-ranking official dies and you say, man, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to attend that funeral? And there's a lot of people sometimes who will line up in lines just to go by and look at a casket. Don't even get to see the person, just see the casket of the individual. And I thought, they give up their time, they give up their talents, they give up their jobs, they give up money. And it doesn't matter how bad the weather is, it doesn't matter whether they feel good or whether they don't feel good. And they'll do all this stuff to get to this one day. And yet, right now, today, we are in the presence of a being who is more powerful, more glorious, more holy, more honorable, more grand than anything else in the entirety of the world. And we are doing something that is an unbelievable experience to get to enter into His presence and bow before Him. And people will miss that at the drop of a hat. It's a shame, is what it is. It is a shame that people will do that. And I asked the question, I wonder how God feels when individuals I'm going to make it to the Super Bowl. Can't worship God. Can't come and remember the death on the cross. But boy, I sure will stand in line 20 hours to look at a dead body in a casket. It irks me. I want a soapbox. But it does irk me. Okay? We don't have our priorities right sometimes, and it's really sad. Really sad. Solomon has been discussing in the book of Ecclesiastes riches, has he not? And has he been presenting the good side or the bad side of riches? Oh, not to this point. Up to this point, he's only been talking about the bad side of riches, has he not? How people labor and work and labor and work, and all they do is what? Die and leave them all behind, right? And the only people that they really benefit are them because they get to what? Stare at them. Woo, look at my Rolls Royce. Okay? Woo, look at my big mansion. And then they just croak. And they just leave it all behind, don't they? And who do they leave it to? Leave it to their kids? Leave it to the government? Leave it to people who don't care about it? Leave it to people who will tear it up? Leave it to people who will lose it? And they work their whole life for all that, only to leave it. And Solomon has seen that. And he presents that side of wealth and that side of riches, doesn't he? And that was part of his experiment as he was going through this earth. But all of a sudden, just like in other instances, he flips the coin and he looks on the other side of the coin. And that's what he does starting in Ecclesiastes 5 verse 18. Notice what he says. Behold that which I have seen. Again, I want to emphasize, I would like to have been with Solomon as he carried out the experiment. Because I believe he was actively engaged in it. I don't believe that he was just somebody who just sent some people out to do it for him. I believe that he actually took part in much of the stuff that he's talking about in this book. And he says it, doesn't it? I have seen. I've witnessed it. I've experienced it firsthand. And it makes it a whole different ball game than if he was just so rich he just had some people do it and then come back and report to him. Solomon went through this stuff. But notice what he sees. It is good and comely for one to eat and to drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor, which he hath taken under the sun, all the days of his life, which God giveth him for his portion. Oh, Solomon, you're confusing me. Aren't you? You just talked about how bad all my stuff is. And now all of a sudden you tell me everything I have and everything that I've worked for is, and he describes it in 2 words. What are they? Good and comely. Man. That little word good. Good, pleasant, agreeable, valuable in estimation, appropriate, becoming, right. The word comely is even, kind of a step up from that. It is defined as beautiful, fair, and handsome. Beautiful, fair, and handsome. Notice point number 1, there are some people who have no problem with this idea at all, do they? As far as enjoying what they got. But they get it and what? Go to town, do they not? I mean, they just go to town. They enjoy it every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday, and then they got to work a whole nother week to do it all over again. Okay? But they've got no problems enjoying the bounty of their wealth and their accumulation. But notice point 2. There are others who do have a problem spending money on themselves, don't they? Sometimes you find that it's not easy to do that. Okay? When couples come to me for marriage counseling and other things, one of the things that we talk about are finances. Okay? And this can become a problem for kids. Okay? They just want to enjoy the fruits of their labor, right? Or they know that they need to save, and so they save and they save and they save and they save, and they never what? They never spend anything on themselves. Well, those are 2 ends of the spectrum, isn't it? And so here's what I try to tell them, okay? Number 1, set aside a percentage of your money for God. Okay? And make certain that is off the top, folks. That is not on the bottom end of that stick. Okay? I make $200,000. I'm going to give 10% to God. That's $20,000. Give it. Give it. You figure out how much that is a week, whatever you got, you give it. And you make certain you do that right off the top. He deserves our first fruits, not the bottom of the barrel. Okay? Because that's who He is, isn't He? And He's deserving of it. He blessed us with it. He's deserving of a portion of it back. Second thing I tell them, you save a certain percentage of your money. Okay? Because that's a hard thing to do for young people, isn't it? One of the best things they ever came up with was automatic deduction for savings accounts out of your checking account. You know that? You want to know why? You never miss it, do you? If you start day 1, they take it out and you never miss it. And if they match it, that's even gooder, isn't it? Okay? And people say, well, they'll let me take 8 to 10% out. How much should I do? How much do you tell them? As much as you stinking can. If they'll let you take 10, take 10. If they'll let you take 12, take 12. If they'll let you take 15, take 15. You will never regret saving money. You'll never regret that. Okay? So they've dedicated a certain portion to savings. They've given their money to God. And then guess what I tell them? Enjoy the rest. Enjoy the rest. Right? And don't feel guilty about that. Pay your bills, feed yourselves, take a trip, buy a car, buy a goat. I don't know what you want. You know, whatever makes you. Now you think that's funny. I got some friends that when they spend their money, they buy goats. They got little goat farms. Okay? I'm serious. It makes them happy. I was in a gospel meeting about 2 years ago, and I was at a guy's house, and he looked outside and said, look at my little goats. Okay? That's what he does for his business. But whatever, after that, it is, what does Solomon say? It is good and comely for you to enjoy the what? The fruits of your labors, folks. Okay? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we don't need to shame people. We don't need to guilt people because they use their money in certain ways. Okay? As long as they're giving to God, they're saving some money for themselves, hey, use your money. Just make certain you use it, well, maybe not even wisely all the time, right? And you can be a little foolish a few times, can't you? You know, I bought a couple of things and Kathleen said, boy, that was foolish. As long as you use it morally, right? Don't do anything immoral with it, okay? And against God and against God's will, but enjoy the fruits of your labors. Now notice what he says at the very end of the verse. Which God giveth him for his portion. Man. You see, we need to remember that what? Everything comes from whom? Comes from God, folks. Everything comes from God. Notice point 2. Yes, we've put in the time, we've put in the work. But guess what? If it hadn't been for God, I wouldn't have any of it, would I? He's blessed us with knowledge, skills, health, time to labor, and to benefit from them. If we truly appreciate that our profits are from God, we will spend our money, but it might be on things that are not materialistic. You know that? Just got through with a lesson talking about Chamala Mission, didn't I? And how we're going to be taking up money for that. This is what my great aunt would say is extra. Okay? It's extra. Okay? It's over and beyond your what? Your normal contribution. It's extra. That's what she said. Aunt Elle, I'll never forget it. Extra. She also said sandwich. You want some sandwiches? Okay? She's just an old country gal. Where are we going to get that extra from? You know? It's going to be from not our savings, not what we normally give to God. It's going to come out of that stuff that we have for who? For ourselves, right? Now, well, that preacher, he just ruining everything. I was going to buy a sofa this month, but now he wants me to give it to Chamala Mission. Well, I didn't say that, did I? I didn't say that. I said this. I said that perhaps there are some expenditures that we need to make that aren't materialistic, but are wise uses of our extra funds. You know that? And those are the things. Somebody said, you can never take with you what you save, but you can always take with you what you give away. You see, what we give away, what the good works that we do with our money to help and assist others, folks, those works will follow us where? Into the judgment, won't they? That's right. Treasures in heaven is where those things go. And so sometimes we need to just take a different look at our money and where we're spending it. And, do I really need that couch, or can I put that money to the Chamala mission? Okay? You want to know what will probably happen? You'll put it to Chamala mission, and a couple months later, you'll go get your couch. You know that? I'm serious. And you'll get both. Dutch?
I'd like to point out that most of us buy a car that we can't afford to pay cash for. We buy it on loan. Once that car is paid off, oh, we got more money, we can spend more money. What I've told my children is the same thing that my dad taught me. That money, you put in a separate bank account. Have it pulled out just the way it was when you were paying the car. It goes into an account. You never had it before to spend. You put it in that account. That pays for Tuala Mission. It pays for what I do for my overtime. It's my way of giving.
Oh, yeah, you can find those extras, can't you? Yep.
And it is so easy to do. Plus, if I need another car or I need something fixed, I have that set aside to take care of the emergency. Tuala Mission is an emergency. So that's what it's called. It's an emergency fund.
Oh, yeah, and you got to have one. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. All right, go to Ecclesiastes 5:19. It continues this thought through the end of the chapter, guys. Every man also, to whom God hath given riches and wealth, hath given him, listen to him, the power to eat thereof, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor. This is the gift from God. I want you to think about that. To enjoy what we profit from is God's gift to who? God's gift to man. Okay? If I buy a book, guess what? That's God's gift to me, isn't it? You may not buy a book. I don't want no more. You don't want no books. Okay? But, if a woman goes buy her a piece of jewelry with her funds, that's God's what? That's God's gift to her. Okay? If a couple decides, hey, we're going to take a trip with this extra money, that's God's gift to you. Okay? And, it makes, when we see everything as a part of what God gives to us, it makes us much more appreciative of what we have and even what we're experiencing, doesn't it? This is God's gift to me, and it's just unbelievable. Notice the point A there. The one thing we want from our work is profit. It enables us to eat, enables us to spend and save, it enables us to be happy and rejoice. Isn't that true? That's why you work. But we need to remember it's a gift of God. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. When my daughter was in PT school, physical therapy school, she called one day and she says, Dad, we got a test. And this is a booger of a test. That means it's hard. Okay? I'm translating that word booger. Okay? This is a hard test. And I said, well, what makes it so hard? She said, he is going to tell us one movement that somebody makes. Maybe it's somebody, a person standing at a plate to swing a bat, and he swings the bat and hits the ball. And she says, we have to tell him from brain to hand, every part of the body that is influenced by that swing. Can you imagine that? How intricate that is? Now we're talking about, bones, we're talking about muscles, we're talking about nerves, We're talking, and not just one or two, all of them, from start to finish, about what's impacted. Just think about opening your hand and how much is involved in just the simple act of opening your hand, and how many things that are there. As I thought about that, though, this is what I thought about. It would be interesting for us to be able to track the involvement of God in all that goes in our wealth and profits. If we could do this, we would be amazed and be thankful of God's involvement in what we have. And I just listed some things. God's involved in our intellect, isn't He? God's involved in our health, our talents, our personalities. What about bringing others into our lives that help us to accomplish something that we can't accomplish? How about the weather? Does that play a pretty important part in some individuals' incomes? Oh, yes. Right here on the beach, the weather plays a huge role in that, does it not? The growth of animals and plants, transportation, natural resources. In fact, it would probably be almost impossible for us to go into every little thing that God has a hand in to bring about me having a profit at the end of the week. You know that? But guess what? He's there. And we need to remember that, don't we? God is intricately involved in my life, in the blessings of my life. And who am I to withhold from Him what He has so richly given to me? When we eat, we should give thanks. When we enjoy the fruits of our labors, we should give thanks. When we receive our paychecks or profits, we should give thanks. When we retire from our labors, we should give thanks. When we are able to pass our profits on to others, we should give thanks. God, I have what I have. I am what I am because of who? Because of You. Okay? We've got to remember that, don't we? It is the gift of God. Ecclesiastes 5:20. For he shall not much remember the days of his life, because God answered him in the joy of his heart. Now, when you read that, do you scratch your head? When you just take a verse, if you were just to open your Bible today and you read Ecclesiastes, okay, God's going to give me something from the Bible today. That's what people do, and they just open their Bible and start reading. And you read this verse, for he shall not much remember the days of his life, because God answered him in the joy of his heart. I'd be going, now what does that mean? Wouldn't you? In the context. Folks, when you work, does it sometimes get hard? Yeah. We struggle. We get frustrated. There's tough decisions that have to be made. There's long hours. Sometimes the work is hard, isn't it? There's blood, there's sweat, there's tears, there's arguments, there's fights. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on through the course of a week in order for us to what? Get a measly little paycheck, right? It's hard. It's not easy. But notice point B, then we get to do what? Then we get to enjoy the fruits of our labors, don't we? We go to Piggly Wiggly. That used to be an old grocery store years ago, don't we? Still is. But you don't see Piggly Wigglies nearly as much, do you? You do there, absolutely. In my day, where Kathleen and I worked, it was pick-pack food stores. I don't know why that. You get to make a major purchase, don't you? You get to get a trip. We get to enjoy a few days of relaxation with friends and relatives. We go play a round of golf. We get to go to the mall. We get to go to a spa. We get to enjoy what all that hassle was that we went through last week, don't we? Notice, while enjoying our rewards, we do not remember the days of our life. Okay? When you're kicked back there in a spa, just getting treated like a queen, guess what? You're not thinking about work anymore, are you? Nah, all that's gone. Ooh, boy, ain't this wonderful? Look at me, you know. And you forget all the hard stuff, all the difficulties, all the travail that went in to get you what you've got. And that's what Solomon's talking about, folks. The joy enables us to forget the toil. The relaxation causes us to forget the work. The pleasure makes us forget the pain. It's almost like childbearing, isn't it? You would think after a woman has one, she don't want no more. I've just watched her do it once and don't want no more. Ain't that right? You know, I've never seen a man volunteer, hey, I'll have the next one. You know, that don't happen. But after the lady has the child, guess what she wants? She'll have another one. And she'll have another one. And sometimes even another one. You want to know why? That's right. You experience the joy, and the joy causes you to what? Forget the toil. Okay? And you're okay with doing it all over again. Okay? Now, granted, when you first get pregnant, you might say, why did I do this again? Notice what Solomon says. God answered him in the joy of his heart. Athletes forget the pain and travail of surgeries and rehab. Why? Because after those surgeries and rehab, they're able to play the game again, aren't they? And all that's worth it. A person who labors intensely for years to build a business will start another company. Why? Because the joy he received in being profitable and being successful in that first job. Folks, building a company initially is tough, isn't it? So here we are, we're kind of crazy people, aren't we? We'll put ourselves through all kinds of misery, all kinds of stress, all kinds of heartache, get a little reward for that, and then guess what? Do it all over again. Well, we're smart people, aren't we? But that's what it's intended to do. Yes, ma'am.
I can remember, and probably a lot of mothers can remember doing this. They go shopping and get this, that, and you get this and that for you, and all. And you get up to the cash register, and you start feeling like, well, maybe I should put that back.
That's what I'm saying. There it is.
All the time, you know, it's almost feeling guilty for treating yourself, but something.
She ain't never put nothing back.
You need to come sit right over here for the remainder of worship, and then I don't even want to watch y'all drive home. I hope y'all came in separate cars. but I think men and women do that. You know, you want to buy something, you want to have it, and then you won't do it because you think, nah, that's just a waste or whatever. No, and that's the mindset Solomon is trying to get us not to develop, right? That it's okay to do what? It's okay to enjoy the fruit of your labor. That's one. And remember, when I buy that, I don't look at it as just a book. I say, this is, what do we say? This is God's gift to me. And it is. What we have, folks, are gifts from God, whatever it is that we have. You know, don't feel guilty about doing it. Now, if we mature correctly as a Christian, then our purchases and our expenditures are going to be different, like we talked about a while ago, right? I won't buy a couch I'll give to Chamala Mission. I won't do certain things in order to give to this particular charity. Okay? I won't go buy myself something really nice because I know the family next door is struggling and they need a couple of meals prepared for them, and I'll go help them. And as we mature, our purchases will be different, but it's okay. You know, if we buy something for ourselves, we shouldn't feel guilty about it. Now, here's what's interesting. We'll look at points 2 down there under D. God knows that joy can remove sorrow. God knows that reward makes all the suffering worth it. Notice point E. Paul seemed to understand this before he ever experienced eternity. Is life hard? Life's hard. Is the Christian life hard at times? Yeah, a lot of sacrifice, right? I mean, a lot of give. Well, in fact, Christianity is all about giving up of what? Of self. None of self and all of thee, according to the song. And Paul understood it. Notice what he says. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Did Paul go through a lot of mess? I can't even imagine what that man experienced, you know it? I can't imagine looking at his body after he went through some of the things that he went through. 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. That's 195 lashes to the back. 195. That's a lot. You know what? Thrice, 3 times, I was beaten with what? Rods. Because we're talking about sticks about like the size of a broomstick and being popped over your back. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was what? Once I was stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A day and a night have I been in the deep, he says. And that doesn't include all the difficulties he experienced through the course of his life. And listen to what he says. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. The things which are seen are what? Temporal. But the things which are not seen are eternal, lasting in nature. You see, Paul had the right perspective on what he was going through, didn't he? It's hard, it's difficult, but guess what? The joy of heaven, the reward of heaven, what I'll receive in that last day will be worth everything I've experienced and given up here in this life. If only I could develop the mind of Paul. You know what? We have difficulty just making it to the building, don't we? Sad. I bet Paul didn't have difficulty making it to the church building. You know what? To the worship, I should say to the worship services. You know, we say the church building, you know, that's only the place where it's done. Paul didn't have difficulty with that. Not at all. All right, chapter 6. Can you believe it? We are moving right through this book. We'll be finished with Ecclesiastes before Revelation. At this pace, goodness. Listen to what he says. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. Woo-wee. Man. There are many people in our society who love to highlight the differences that exist between men, don't they? It's just unbelievable how focused people are in our society upon our differences. And I got to thinking, you know, the reality is there are probably only about 10 things that could really make us different from one another. Do you know that? 10 things. And for the most part, those 10 things are pretty superficial in nature. And I've listed some of them. Race and culture. But do we divide over that? All the time. All the time we divide over that, right? And there's people out there who are intent on keeping us divided. You're black, you're white, you get over there, you get over there. I want mine over here, you get yours over there. It's unbelievable. How about the next one? Age. Does that divide us? Oh, yeah. When I was growing up, what do they call that? I can't remember what we called that. When you had the young people and you had the old people, we called that some name. What was that? Huh? Yeah, the generation gap. You don't hear that terminology like that anymore. That's what everybody, the generation gap, right? And we got a pretty big gap of it today. The only problem is young people are now 37 rather than, 18. How about this one? Body types. Does that keep us divided? Yeah. Keeps us divided. Intellect? Yeah. The dumb ones and the smart ones. Right? The intellectuals.
I live next door to an engineer, so he knows everything.
Hey, some of them do. Personalities, socioeconomic status, gender. There's a big one, isn't it? And how about this one? Even the place of one's birth. You're an old country person. And I'm from the city. Right? Like that matters. You know? We both get up and do what? Put our britches on. Well, I'm sorry, pants. Okay? But you see, if you watch the differences over here, okay? Now, just watch them, both of us get up, get ready, go to work, and do that for a particular reason. I'll guarantee you 50 of the things we do today are identical to one another, don't we? We get up, we take a shower, we eat breakfast, we drink some coffee, we both drive to work, we both have to fill up our cars or plug them in now. I don't know which one you say. Okay.
You let the big one on.
What's that?
Political.
Oh yeah, that's a biggie. But it divides us and always will. But guys, the reality is there's so much more that is common. Notice what Solomon says. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is what? It is common among men. We have so much more in common than we do differences. You want to know why? Because there's one race, and it's called human. And all those people are made in the image and likeness of the Almighty God. But we can't see that because people want us divided. But we have more in common than we do differences. Now, notice point B there real quickly. Some of the commonalities are good, aren't they? Some of the commonalities that we have are wonderful. But then there are some things common that men have, and they're evil. All die. Is that pretty common? I don't care who you are. Unless Jesus comes again, you're going to what? You're going to die. And that's not classified as a good thing. Okay? Even the Bible says it's the enemy of man, isn't it? It's an evil, but it's common among men. Now Solomon is about to discuss one of those evils that is common among men. If I had known this is where I'd finish, I wouldn't have given you any more notes. Because now that I give you a note, you'll skip next week. Okay? See, if I'd left you hanging, you'd say, oh, I got to go back next week to see what that evil is. Okay? We're going to be talking about that one next week.